We're back, Kevin.
Yes.
What did you do to the sound?
I think the fault police maybe shut us down.
Well, anyone who is tuning back in, please let us know that the sound is working A-OK, and we'll get going with more comments, because there was loads of great comments coming through there. But unfortunately, the sound disappeared on us, so I'm hoping now that the sound is back. Anyone who wishes to comment on that, just to let us know that you can hear us on the World Wide Web. But thanks for all your brilliant comments who were saying sack the producer, and Kevin was talking shite anyway, so it wasn't a problem that the volume was going down. Somebody said that, Kevin.
Did they?
They did.
Oh, very, very nice. Was it my dad?
I don't know. It wasn't me.
Family member.
Right, sorry about that, guys. We're back on. No idea what happened there, but a reset procedure, switch it all off, put it back on, and it seemed to work again. So thanks for your patience, and we're back. We were talking about left backs. We were talking about Greg Taylor. Yeah, he's a first choice left back, but we definitely need backup. And it all depends on who's available, Kevin. You can go out there, you can buy a backup player, but if someone else becomes available and they're a better option than Taylor, then he plays. But we definitely need to strengthen on the left back. Anywhere else in the park now that you still think we need to bring someone else in?
I'm more looking at the defensive options. I probably agree with you that we maybe need a third choice goalkeeper or a second choice goalkeeper. That budget is not going to stretch to Fraser Foster coming back on loan, I don't think. I think we've spent a big part of the budget on the first choice goalkeeper, which is Barkas. And now what's happened to Fraser, as we all predicted was going to happen to him. I can actually see him going elsewhere, and I can't see him coming to Celtic, but I can see us bringing another goalkeeper on loan. Now the English leagues are back and the European leagues are back. You can see how the squads are going to develop over the next few weeks.
Yeah. And
you'll see the players that will become available for loan. I don't know if the sound was on when I was talking about Barry Douglas, but he wasn't in the Leeds squad at all on Saturday night. Backer for PSG last night didn't play either. One of the strange things, one of the players that was linked to us under Brendan Rodgers, Timothy Castanga, actually signed for Leicester and played for Leicester yesterday.
What was the fee?
I'm not 100% sure because I didn't realise he had signed for Leicester. But you're talking about a fullback who could play either side. He was one that could play either side. But then Leicester got a fair amount of money for Ben Chilwell, who's ended up going to Chelsea. So I found that I actually did have a little laugh to myself when I saw Timothy Castanga actually starting for Leicester yesterday. I was like, oh, it's well seen Nicky Hammond's still got that book of names. And it's really quite funny, and it shows you how football works, and it shows you how these managers follow players, or they have the same personnel or the agents that they use to follow players. That the boy Justin on the left and Castanga on the right were both linked to Celtic when Brendan Rodgers was the manager. It shows you how that happens, and it shows you that these players that keep on coming around all the time. It's the same with Ajeti and Mo for us as well.
Well, I'm glad that we stuck it out with Ajeti because he looks like a quality acquisition. I just want to speak a wee bit more about that. We've spoken about Klimala and Leigh Griffiths, so let's talk about Ajeti. He's beginning to show us what he can do.
Definitely. I was well impressed with his work rate at the weekend. He liked to roll up his sleeves and get involved in the unglamorous side of the game as well. I mean, his reactions in the box are quite unbelievable. He's that sharp. He's only got one thought in mind when that ball broke to him at the weekend. That was to get a shot on target. It was the same against Motherwell the week before, same against Dundee United. As soon as he gets half a sniff in the box, he's shooting. And that's really different for Eduard. Eduard doesn't seem to have... Eduard's got tons of great stuff in his locker, but that striker's instinct doesn't seem to be there. How many times you've seen Edouard dance into the box and you've went like that, shoot, let it go. where Ajeti, and also when we spoke about Leigh Griffiths, his first thought at times is, I'm having a bash here.
Yeah.
And that's what Ajeti seems to have as well.
Just that instinct.
Just that instinct. He uses his body shape really well as well. We've spoke about that before. He gets his cell in front of defenders, and he's quite difficult to shake off the ball.
I'm going to say here actually that the reported fee was 5 million, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think that's a snip.
At this precise moment in time, obviously you want to see him over the course of the season, but it seems strange to actually say this, but maybe this is because I've been moulded into the Celtic model. But if he has 2 or 3 great seasons up here, that 5 million is going to seem like a snip with the fee that we'll get for him.
Yeah. Stevie Boy agrees. He thinks Ajeti will get better and better, whereas William Kennedy reckons that Ajeti reminds him of Leigh Griffiths. And Frederick Yamstam, he's a solid wee guy, low centre of gravity, striker's instinct. He does look a solid wee unit, doesn't he?
Definitely. You mentioned Gary Hooper earlier. Scott McDonald as well had that wee low centre of gravity as well. Douglas had it.
He did.
Douglas had it, but then Douglas progressed to be a all-round footballer that could probably have played anywhere on the park.
He used his backside to great effect. On Facebook, there's a point here. Our bench on Saturday, Kevin, was excellent. If we get another left back in, I'll go as far to say it's one of the best transfer windows I've seen, and I'm coming up 39 and a Celtic fan all my life. I didn't mention it. I threw it out there the other week there. Is this the best transfer window? And what I meant there, I mean, the transfer windows have only been in place since about 2002, 2003. And we've had some solid transfer windows, let's be honest about it. But, you know, when you're looking at the calibre of the player that we've been bringing in, it's been a very good transfer window. We're going to talk about Shane Duffy in a few moments there. But I still reckon we need to bring in another left back. Now, Lawrence Zed Reid confirms that Leicester paid 21.6 million for Castagna.
Gee, wow. And we wouldn't pay 8 for him?
Is that
6
what
or
the fee?
8?
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons, one of the reported reasons that Rodgers was unhappy that we wouldn't pay £6 or £8 million for him. 21 million.
And that was at the time of the McGinn saga as well, wasn't it? That was the 2 players that Rodgers wanted.
What did they get? Did they get 51 million for Chilwell from Chelsea? So then they've went and nearly spent half of it on his replacement. That's phenomenal. That is a phenomenal amount of money. I mean, they paid £8 million for Justin from Luton Town, the other fullback as well. So, I mean, that was out of our price range, but he was linked with us as well. I think he was one of the names on the famous leaked document.
Oh, the leaked document. We'll come back in a moment to English football transfers because we will be speaking about Eduard and some comments that have been made by yet another ex-player who was quite disparaging of Scottish football, I would say. Paul Cockwell. Love the show, Paul, and I'm a Hibs fan. Well, welcome to the show, Paul. You're welcome. I mean, we've had a lot of fans from other teams getting involved in this show.
I know.
A lot of fans from a certain team get blocked immediately because of whatever they're saying certainly isn't football related. But you're always welcome if you're going to come on and join in the chat. So welcome to the show. The other striker we haven't spoken about so far is Eduard, who has been linked now to Arsenal. That resulted in Gary Breen, who comments in relation to Scottish football. There's no decent strikers in Scottish football, Kevin. There's no strikers in Scottish football who would do a job in the glorified EPL, according to this guy. And I think what you're looking at here is odds on Eduard, right? He's by far and away the star man in Scottish football. We all know that. He's probably been in that position for at least 2 seasons. Now, we're coming to that point when even the most avid of Celtic fan realises that a player gets to a point where it's perhaps that time where he moves on, because the club have probably promised him that at the initial stages of signing him. We're going to put you on a platform. You're going to do what, let's say, Moussa Dembele did. You're going to do what Virgil van Dijk did. And they use it as a bargaining tool to get young players to come in. I mean, and it's worked well. It's worked very well for Celtic. We're getting to that stage. I don't think we're there yet with Eduard, to be fair. I still think he's going to finish the season with Celtic. I think that's what made it difficult for us with Tierney. I don't think we're ready for Tierney to leave.
No, not at all. But Tierney was in a different situation. Now there's two sides to this story, and I don't think it's for us to go into the two sides of the story. I'm sure there's going to be some of the viewers will comment that he was forced out the club, and there's other sides of the stories where he's had a look at the number of injuries that he's got, and he's been offered an absolute life-changing amount of money and a chance to go to a good Premiership club, which has now been proved. He's got 2 winners' medal. He's got an FA Cup winners' medal. He's got a Charity Shield winners' medal. And he's playing in the Champions League this year for a decent-sized English club who had a good result at the weekend as well. But I don't think we were ready for Kieran Tierney to go.
No.
I think we thought he would have hung about until after this season. But football doesn't work like that. Football players sometimes don't see things the same as what fans actually see it. We see some things as black and white at times, and we make decisions based on fan point of views rather than based on... we're getting asked to comment on situations and on players' financial situations that we'll never be in a position to be. We're getting asked to make a decision. What would you do if you were in Kieran Tierney's shoes? Well, you'll never know, because you weren't in those shoes being offered what he was being offered, being told what he was being told.
It's a good point, Kevin, because we do fall into the land of fantasy when we're talking about, why leave for Arsenal when they're, offering you 8 times the wages. Well, it's one of these things that what attracted you to the 96-year-old billionaire? They say that to the young model. Well, money talks. Have the people that are saying this ever been offered a job where they could double their wages? It doesn't happen that often. No. Right, in the real world, outside of football and stuff like that. And if someone dangles that carrot in front of you, and you've got a future, and you've got a partner and a mortgage and kids, and they've still got to consider their own financial future. So the Kieran Tierney thing at the time, I just don't think Celtic fans were ready for it. I think it was disheartening to hear his comments about maybe having a fear of returning to Celtic Park. I think everybody would welcome Kieran Tierney back, and he's always talking highly of the club, and I wish him all the best. Eduard, I think Celtic fans have always realised that this kid that we got from PSG was going to develop. He's developed maybe beyond anyone's kind of imagination. He's for me, he's actually a better striker than Dembele. When Dembele left Celtic, I think Edouard's actually a higher standard of player. If anyone had any kind of foresight whatsoever, they'd be buying the two of them and playing them together, right? But I really don't think Edouard leaving is an option this season, because he is a star man. We've heard interest in Ayer, we've heard interest in Cham, and as much as I regard them and rate them so highly, I don't think the thing would crumble without them. I think if you remove Eduard for that team, it's your star man. And that would be my biggest issue with that.
There's a psychological blow as well, losing Eduard, that we might not recover from. Us as a fan base, it could cause a lot of bad feeling between the fan base and the club, especially the money men in the club. And we'll go back to Brendan Rodgers. It's always about the Holy Trinity. We all need to be on the same board. We all need to be on the same level. We all need to be wanting the same things. And if all 3 of us are together, then we're virtually unstoppable.
The Holy Trinity.
And I think selling Eduard could put a massive chasm in that. It could take us a little while to get over it.
Well, a lot of players, a lot of fans speak about Kenny Dalglish's departure in that kind of terms, in those kind of terms, Kevin, back in 77. People struggled to get over Charlie Nicholas leaving in 1983. And, it's because they were the star men of their respective Celtic sides. Eduard is our top player. He's our top player. He's the guy that, You could put him up against any team in Europe, whoever we are going to be drawn against, and he wouldn't look out of place. He's one of those. So we're not ready to lose him, and hopefully we don't. He's inevitably going to be linked to top sides. The minute anyone gets linked to an EPL side, you get players like Gary Breen who comes out and makes these comments. When you think about Eduard and what he could do, when you look at what I've just said there, I regard Eduard as a far more complete player than Dembele was when he left Celtic. The one thing, and I've said this before, that Dembele done better was he was a better defender than Eduard was, right? He was a different type of player, so it's maybe unfair, but they're both French, they both play centre forward, so I'm going to compare them. Now, if Dembele, 2 years at Lyon, was to move to the English League right now, would he be a success?
Yes.
100%.
100%.
100%. How much would it take to take him to the English League from Lyon?
50, 60 million.
Right. So we're now in a situation where we've got Edouard, and we know he's developing, and in a couple of years he'll have developed even further. If we sell him, right, and some of the fees that have been quoted, because people don't regard Scottish football in great terms, then you're looking at a fee of beyond anything we've ever received before. So the highest fee we've ever received is 25 million quid for Kieran Tierney. If Eduard was sold for 25 million, would you feel hard done by as a Celtic fan?
Yes.
Yeah. 30 million.
Yes.
Right. And then you're starting to push it up from there. So
there is always going to be a Scottish tax. There's always going to be a Scottish ceiling on what you're going to get for a player. What Arsenal are doing now, they're looking at what they've got at Kieran Tierney. And they're looking at, 25 million is an actual steal for Kieran Tierney. So what else has that club got? Because have a look at our record. Dembele, Wanyama, Foster, Van Dijk, all guys who had to go to, the ones that went to England went to Southampton as a stepping stone.
even Ki Sung-young, the career he had down south,
that he had down south as well. So now Arsenal are now looking, going, by the way, we can get a guy who, if he ends up down here or ends up going to France, is going to cost double or maybe 3 times the amount of money, as long as we give him 6 months to bed in. Because there is going to need to be a bedding in period. That is a higher standard of football. And when we were interviewed by Arseblog about Kieran Tierney going down there, and that was one thing that I emphasised, that he wasn't going to go down there and be a success right away. He was going to need to 6, 7, 8 months to bed in, get used to the game, get used to the intensity, before he would be a success. And he got a bad injury right away when he went down there. He got a shoulder injury. Mm-hmm. But now they're seeing the player that I always knew, always predicted that he was going to be on, never always knew. But now they're coming back to us looking at Edouard the exact same. They're looking, well, he's the star man. There's a Scottish ceiling what we'll pay here. And
what is the ceiling?
I reckon the ceiling's 30. 30 up front.
With add-ons. We've got a comment in here from St Rock Development. Welcome to the show. You're always welcome. From St Rock's, our friends of the Candy. And he's talking about the Tierney deal changing the narrative. You're talking about the Scottish football tax. It's probably a good way to describe it, Kevin, whereby there will be a limit that these clubs go to. Do you think 30 million is a bit low for Eduard? And by the way, I'm not pitching that we should sell him, but, there's a price for success. And if you're looking at 5 tournaments, as I keep banging on about, the most important one of which is the league for 10 in a row, right? In order to win at least 3 of them, because I think if you win any more than that, it's beyond anybody's wildest dreams. To win at least 3 of them, you're going to need players like Eduard. And if they're going to be sold, it would need to be for an astronomical amount of money. And I don't think £30 million is that figure.
I don't think £30 million is that figure this season. But if he signs, next year he goes into the last year of his contract. Next year, I'm sure. I might be wrong on that. Somebody will probably pull me up on that. And
people didn't pull you up if they disagree with you, Kev.
And if that's the case, then 30 million is a fabulous figure for somebody in the last year of their contract.
You would still, if you were to accept that, then you're pushing for a big sell-on.
Big sell-on fee and big bonuses. You're looking at that deal to nudge upwards of 40 if they give you £30 million up front.
People think you're
I know people are going to say I'm selling
No.
them short, but
what I'm going to say is, if the comment I'm about to make, people will think that your opinion is worthless because the guy plays in Scotland. Dembele and Edouard, there is a potential that those two, at some point, will lead the line for France. Now, people might say no chance because you've got, and they'll reel off a dozen players that they reckon are better French options. But you look at where Dembele is at the moment. His next move will be the English League.
yes.
Right? The transfer fee we're talking about will be between 60 and 80 million quid. Mm-hmm. Because we've already seen £60 million figures. I think Celtic have got a sell on at 10%.
10%.
Now, if Eduard goes straight to the EPL, that's fine. But if it goes sideways, and I say sideways, it's hardly a sideways move, but you know what I mean, to get back to that level. And they two guys are playing in what is deemed as one of the best leagues in the world, the EPL, at some stage. Then they'll be up for French international honours, won't they? I mean, at the moment, you've got Edouard ripping it up every single time he plays for the under-21s. His goal-scoring record for France's underage teams, from right back to, I think, 16s forward to the 21s, if it's not a goal a game, it's not far off it. And that's international level. These guys will make the step up eventually. They might be 27, 28 because of the talent that French football produces. But if they two guys are playing up front for France, and we think back to a time where we had both of them, and we let one of them go for 20 and one of them go for 30, it'll be a huge regret for me.
It will be a huge regret, but then that's what, at that point in the career when they left us, what they're going to, we can't control what's going to happen after they leave us. And we do feel like the Petri dish of where they develop to a certain point, then they must go into clinical trials somewhere else. And we
I love the way your brain works, Kevin.
we're just the lab. And once it goes into the wide world, which is better leagues,
You're like the chart making hit factory, Stock Aitken and Waterman. That's us. Give us a tune, we'll turn it into a hit, and we'll sell it back to you.
But do you know what I mean? We seem to be at the bottom of the chain. And my thought personally was that Edouard would make the sideward step to France. He would go to a Champions League team in France. Mm-hmm. But my main worry is the fact that Arsenal are in the Champions League. They've already got French players there. Mm. They'll be talking. And he may see Arsenal as a decent move. And you don't want him thrown down in tools if he doesn't get a move by the time we get to October the 1st.
Do you think he's got that in him?
I would hope
think
not.
His attitude's been brilliant since he came to Celtic.
His agent might have it in him. And that's a bigger worry.
This down in tools thing worries me because we've seen it. You've seen it with Van Dijk at Southampton and Boyata at Celtic.
You saw it with Van Dijk at Celtic as well.
Yeah.
When we got put out the Champions League by Malmo, he basically told the club he wasn't playing for them again. That came from somebody in the club.
You going to name your source, Kevin? Right.
No.
Sorry? No, I didn't think you would. Okay, no,
but
that's...
Anybody that was at the same meeting as me will know who says it.
All right, well, I didn't get invited to these meetings. I don't have a AAA pass, as some people think I do. I certainly do not. I didn't get invited.
I've no longer got one.
That's why you're allowed to tell us all your secrets. Okay, so here we go then. A couple of other points to discuss. We've not spoke about the big man enough, Shane Duffy.
Yes.
It was Shane Duffy that Gary Bean was commenting about going up to Celtic, playing against lesser opposition. There's no decent strikers in Scotland, which got me onto my Eduard point. Eduard is a striker who could go down there, play for Arsenal and score goals. Absolutely no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. No, and if any English Premier League, we're friends with Arseblog, we're friends with the Anfield Rap, and we've been on their podcast quite a few times.
And they're very respectful about Scottish football.
They are, and they come to us for our wild opinions. And we're truthful. We say to them that you're missing tricks in Scottish football. There is players in Scottish football that can walk in and play in the English Premier League.
Remember we were speaking about Van Dijk. The Liverpool boys came up to interview us about Van Dijk, and I had interviewed Ronnie Dyler just weeks before it, I think.
That's
and
right.
Ronnie had been speaking about Van Dijk's lifestyle choices that he had to sort out. And the guys were surprised at that, weren't they? They were like, what are you talking about? I says, well, Georgie Lyle, the porn star, etc. And they had no idea about it. So I think Van Dijk had a lot to learn. Can players become complacent, Kevin, if the game appears to be too easy for them? That's sometimes a concern that I have for the top quality players. Van Dijk scooshed it most weeks. Does that complacency creep in eventually? Is that what we're going to maybe see playing on Eduard's mind at a certain point? I still believe he's going to be here for 10 in a row. I think he's going to see out the season. However, it's the complacency issue. These guys want to develop and move and progress all the time. And I think Edouard, in the back of his mind, because I'm not criticising Scottish football, I know the EPL's a higher standard. Of course it is. You're coming up against higher quality players more often. There's no doubt about that. Of course, it's much better standard.
It'd be ludicrous to say anything different.
Of course. We're realists, Kevin. We know that. But in terms of the level that Celtic are playing at or trying to operate at on a European basis, then I still believe we can produce the players, like you say, and then they go for big money. But it needs to be the right money. Now, there's a point coming through. The points are coming in very, very quickly, so apologies if I've missed any of them. But there was a point coming in saying that if you had to allow one of these guys to go to balance the books, because that was a point you made earlier, Kevin, the player would be Ajer of the three mentioned. You know what I'm going to say here? You're going to have to throw Christie into that mix as well, because Christie's not signed a new deal. He's maybe looking for a move. I wouldn't like to lose him.
I wouldn't like to lose him anyway, but as well. But as you say, there's circumstances where things end up out of your control, and sometimes for the greater good, these decisions are made. Because you can't get into another Boyata situation, and we got our fingers burnt with Boyata.
Yeah,
I mean, we turned down reportedly £9 million because Brendan wanted to keep him.
Yeah,
and £9 million for a player that we had other players there that we could have replaced him with, and we had supposedly signed his replacement anyway in Marvin Comper and Jack Hendry, who scored the winning goal for his Belgian club at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw that.
But getting back to Gary Breen, did Gary Breen play for Coventry?
Yeah.
Right. Shane Duffy, you look at Shane Duffy's career.
I said yeah, but probably was my answer.
Was that the guy that broke his leg at Old Trafford?
No, was that no Davy Boost?
Boost. See, I got completely confused there.
That was the worst leg break ever.
I'm actually cringing.
I can't even look. I can't even look at the picture of that.
Now, Gary Breen, Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy, who's he played for in England?
Well, he as a permanent player, Everton, Blackburn, and Brighton. He's had some loan deals, but that's been his three parent clubs. Yeah.
He's 28, made an awful lot of money.
About 50 appearances for the Republic, just under.
Right. Coming to Scotland's not going to harm his international caps.
He's out of favour at Brighton?
Yes, he was third choice at Brighton. Yep. He's 28. His decision is completely different from a 21-year-old coming up to Scotland. His decision is made on a completely different mindset.
Yep.
That he's got the chance to play for the club that he supported as a boy, and I will safely say play for the biggest football club he will ever play for.
I would totally agree with that. Well, which of the clubs we've mentioned are bigger than Celtic?
None of them.
They might play in a bigger league. You know, Everton are a big club.
Yes.
Right? They play in a big league.
Socially, Everton are probably the only club that would get near the passion of the fan base, and I'm sure Spencer Vignes will actually come on, and the Brighton fan that we know will come on and say, but social, political and passion-wise, Everton are probably the closest club to Celtic that he's played for. But he knows Celtic.
Yeah.
So at 28-year-old, he's looking at either going to West Ham United or whoever else was in for him. Obviously, Celtic's the most attractive move for him. Money's no longer a factor to him. He knows that, he's bankable. He's still going to get a pretty wage at Celtic if he comes permanently.
Oh, no. I know. What was it Manny said at the Stone Roses? He's never had to rake about a skip for his breakfast for a while.
Aye.
That's a bit like Shane Duffy.
Definitely.
You know?
So for Gary Breen to say that, Shane Duffy hasn't made his decision based on furthering his football career. He's probably at his pinnacle of his football career.
And he's going to play European football, Kevin. He's going to be involved in something that means a lot to Celtic fans with Celtic heritage and Celtic families. There's loads of reasons why he would come, but you're right, at that age...
He's not coming to Celtic to improve his chances of getting international caps.
No.
He doesn't need to.
No, he's established.
He's made not a professional choice, he's made a heart and soul choice because he can. He's in a lucky enough position that he can. And maybe Gary Breen is jealous that he never got that point where he could make a decision based solely on footballing reasons.
Well, there was a point, to go back to the point, in the 1990s, Kevin, where Scottish football clubs, well, it's 2 Scottish football clubs, were offering players the same wages they were getting in England. And we've seen it. And we've seen the amount of players that were coming up to Scotland.
Celtic gave Henrik Larsson the same money that Man United offered them.
Celtic were signing players directly from the English market. You know, that was one of Martin O'Neill's MOs, wasn't it? He would sign a player from the English market. We could do that. And what that proved to me, times may have changed in the preceding 17 or 18 years, but what it's proved to me is it all comes down to that offer of money. It's not ambition. It's not because they think the EPL is a bigger league. If you match the money, you know, and you can offer them something like a platform in a Champions League or a platform where you can then move on to another club, they'll come to Celtic. They'll come to a club like Celtic. It all comes down to wages. So when I hear somebody like Breen bemoaning the quality of the Scottish game, I just put him in the ignorant category because that's what he is. He's ignorant to the facts.
Did Gary Breen moan when Steven Gerrard came up here?
Probably. He probably did, you know. But at the end of the day, there's another example. We had a situation where Celtic had Brendan Rodgers and Rangers had Steven Gerrard as their managers. And again, it comes down to if you offer them the money, Celtic and at that point Rangers were as good an option as West Ham or any of the other clubs around about that area of the English league. So these comments are going to continue, Kevin, and I just thought it was right to highlight it.
I'm sure Shane Duffy's not bothered about these comments.
No, I'm pretty sure he isn't.
I'm sure he's not bothered. You mentioned Martin O'Neill. I mentioned Henrik Larsson getting the same money that Man United offered him as well. When Celtic went to Seville, our wage bill was the same as Everton's, and I mentioned Everton before. By the time we got to 2007, Everton's wage bill was 3 times the size of Celtic's. That was in the space of 4 years.
Yeah.
It shows you how it changed.
It shows you that trajectory. Point. Yeah. And by the way, that spend couldn't be maintained at Celtic. There came a point when you're spending that kind of wage over the piece and not getting into the latter stages or even the group stages sometimes of the Champions League, and you can't maintain it. And that's what happened. I think O'Neill had 2 seasons in Europe that were classed as disappointments. And because of that, with the wages, a decision had to be made.
You get to a European Cup final and you still make a loss. That's, unless you're getting bankrolled by some rich backer or you've got a bank that's willing to give you an unlimited overdraft, that can't be sustained.
The big thing is, as fans, you look back on that and you don't care what the balance sheet was
you
in terms of the fact that we got through it. We just enjoyed the journey to Seville and you know, we look back fondly on that. But with that kind of investment back then, we really needed Champions League success.
Definitely.
The UEFA Cup, great, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't generating enough revenue, was it?
No.
And now, but to go back to your point, the proof's in the pudding. Shane Duffy signed for Celtic. He made his debut. He scored a cracking goal. I think, you know, when you're looking at what he was doing, there was one tiny point in the first half where it looked as though his position was wrong, and then this leg came out of nowhere. Brilliant. I thought he brought a calmness to the back line. I love when Ayer goes on one of his gallops, Kevin, and he looks like, you know, he takes out 50 yards, easy, and then he sprays it. I loved seeing him playing with that freedom. He was playing with a smile on his face, as Lawrence Connolly quite rightly said.
Yes, I heard Lawrence saying that, aye.
Julien, I think Julien's distribution is brilliant. One of the best parts of his game. He can spread that ball over the pitch. His goal return's been tremendous. Obviously, Duffy shoved him out the road to score, but I think we've finally nailed it. We've finally nailed it. But as a precaution, we're going to always need the personnel just in case we need to revert back to a flat back four. And that's why I'm going back to the left back again. Mm-hmm. And I'm not criticising Greg Taylor, by the way. Greg Taylor is my first choice left back at the moment. But you can't go into 5 different tournaments with one left back.
You can't go into 5 different tournaments with one left back. You can't go into 5 different tournaments with James Forrest playing left wing back.
That was interesting.
Or moving Callum McGregor out to left wing back, which when we saw the team lines on Saturday, you were like what formation's that? Who's playing where? Mm-hmm. And that concerns me at times when you look at a team and you can't work out who's gone where. It
shows the adaptability of some of the players.
Radio Scotland actually had Frimpong on the left.
Did they?
Aye.
He was the one surprise for me in the starting lineup, Frimpong. And again, not because I don't rate him, because I've spoken highly of Frimpong, since he came into the side. I think there was a period where his form dipped slightly.
Definitely.
I don't know if he was recovering for that.
Of youth.
Well, there was a bit of that. You get double marked. People suss you out a wee bit more. That instinctiveness might be getting held back a wee bit by the game plan.
Aye.
You're getting coached into a way of playing. We've seen a wee bit more of the electric runs coming back into his game. Even Ferencvaros, when he came on, he showed some promise. I was surprised that he was in, but what it meant was Christie was out, because we know that Christie can play on the left, as can El Yunusi, who was benched, and Forrest, obviously, his natural position's on the right, although I think he's very effective on the left. Christie was dropped, unceremoniously, dropped from the side after scoring 2 international goals, albeit from the penalty spot. Do you think there is a situation at the moment with Christie? Do you feel he might be one of the guys that's looking for a move?
I don't know. I didn't read too much into him getting on the bench at the weekend. Just the same, I didn't read too much into Mo being on the bench at the weekend, mainly because they both played 2 games in a week, and I thought there was maybe a bit of squad management.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good point, Kevin.
Coming into
rather
play
than
there,
form,
rather than form. The fact that they came on and got at least 25, 30 minutes each maybe makes me think that was more to a point, rather than them being dropped for the formation.
Yeah.
Could there well be? I don't think we would cut our nose off to spite our faces with somebody as good as Christie, but there just seems to be, I'm picking up a wee bit of a backlash, a bad vibe about Christie. There's been a number of comments about him. He's only playing for himself. He's very this and very this. He's very that. And I'm just wondering if people are now, because he's maybe not signing a new deal, his dad says during the summer that he maybe looked to go to England at one point. I mean, I did reread that interview with Charlie Christie, and Charlie Christie did say at one point he may look to go to England. Mm-hmm. He never says it's going to be this summer. So I'm just generally picking up on a wee bit of a bad vibe surrounding Christie at this precise moment in time. I don't get it myself, but again, we can't control what the management team are going to do. It's up to them. They'll manage things the way that they see fit.
Yeah, I mean, Christie's played a lot of games under Lennon. It's not as though, there was this trajectory that's flatlined since Lennon's come in. He's played plenty of games. It was interesting to note when I spoke to John Yogi Hughes a couple of months ago, he was also speaking about you better get that lad tied down to a deal. Mm-hmm. He's still in touch with Ryan Christie and Charlie Christie, so read between the lines. There might be a bit of a situation in terms of what's on offer, if anything is on offer.
He's on international duty. He's talking to Stuart Armstrong. He's talking to John McGinn. He's talking to Kenny McLean, who, even though Kenny McLean's in the Championship with Norwich, he's talking to John Fleck. He's talking to guys who are playing in the English Premiership. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that these players are not going to talk and don't know what that one's getting, what standard of football is, then you're actually quite naive.
Well, the big thing is, Kevin, as well, they know the limitations of their career in terms of longevity. They know that there's a purple patch at some point where they can cash in and get that move. Even like some of the teams you mentioned, even to Norwich, and that's where the real money is down in England. Christie's maybe at that point, and by the way, he's at a point that I never thought he would be at. He's at a point where he's had probably 2.5 seasons at Celtic that I never thought I'd see.
Until he came on that half-time against Hearts.
Yep, at Murrayfield.
I think we were all maybe talking about him going to Aberdeen permanently. What a loss that would have been to us.
It would have been.
And again, this could be going through his mind. Time's known that aside.
That moment. I know. So I would like to see that one sorted out, because again, for me,
one way or the other,
he contributes. He's a contributor in a big way to Celtic, although I'm not keen on his corner kicks, which I think I've mentioned a few times. He's a player that you can call on. He can make a difference. He can score a goal. His work rate is phenomenal. He maybe loses the ball a wee bit too often for my liking, but he always works back and often wins it back. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. At the moment, I'm going to go with your theory that he's been rested because of the international exertions of him and El Yunusi. I think he'd be great to be in the squad as we go on the March to 5 trophies, Kevin. Now, this is a slightly extended edition of the Bulletin because we lost sound for 5 or 10 minutes. And I do apologise for that. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to everybody who's been involved via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. If you've not already done so, please subscribe on YouTube. It's free, and we will continue to produce daily content for your listening pleasure. All that's left for me to say once again, Kevin, it's been a pleasure to have you back into the studio. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, everybody.